Hello and welcome back to another tips and tricks video in my Minecraft survival world. I thought that I would go ahead and start off here with the gorgeous sunset from our storage area. Go ahead and take a nap, and today's video is going to be all about how to make your Minecraft worlds feel more alive with 5 tips and tricks. So we'll go ahead and take a look at those right now, and then we'll look at them in more detail each individually. So how to make a Minecraft world feel more alive, uh, have more depth to it, be more interesting. Number 1, add functionality. Number 2, add interesting sites. Number 3, add life. Number 4, add story and lore. Number 5, add detail. And you can go ahead and check down in the description if you want to jump around to different parts of the video to see different tips. So starting out with number 1, add functionality. I find that this works better in survival mode. However, you can also have it in creative mode. So go ahead and take a little trip over to my farming village so that I can show you what I mean by adding functionality. So when you build a build, especially in survival mode, it's important that that build has dual functions. So anytime you're building almost anything in survival mode, unless you're very, very late game, you shouldn't be building these huge buildings just to make them look good, because early game and mid game you're going to need to have those buildings be functional as well. So for example, this area over here is my animal district, and I wanted to have kind of a jungle village over here to complement my main base up there. And I could have just built a village with a whole bunch of houses and stuff like that, and it would have looked great and stuff, but it wouldn't have felt alive. So instead what I did is each of these buildings within this village is going to have a very important functionality to it for the survival portion of the game. For example, this is my horse barn. This over here is my pig farm. Inside of there is my cow farm. Over here is my wool farm, and over here is my chicken farm. And around the back, I'm working on a storage building as well as a indoor bee farm. But all of these buildings each have function, meaning that I frequently travel over here to actually use the farms that are inside of these buildings. If you have just a whole bunch of empty buildings in survival world, you won't have reasons to travel to them, and so they won't be seen as much, and they won't be appreciated, and they won't feel as alive. Since all these buildings have functionality, I easily memorize what each building does, and I travel to them very often to use them and collect resources from them. But again, you can also do this in creative mode. It's just you typically won't need resources from it, but you can still add functionality to buildings. For example, you can create a whole bunch of buildings and have different mini games inside of those buildings so that you still have reasons to travel to them. So let's move on to tip number 2, add interesting sites. So this is best demonstrated over here on the main island where my base is, and all the way through these pathways, like I mentioned in my previous video, I have these little just interesting sites along the way that just kind of peek through off the trail, and you don't have to travel to them or check them out, but someone who's not part of this world, who's walking through, is going to see all these little interesting locations, and they're going to want to just explore. And this is a wonderful way to make your world have much more depth and to make it just feel like you put a lot more attention into it because you did. And some of these interesting sites can have functionality, such as this pyramid here, which I'm using as my beacon, and some of them don't necessarily need to. Some of them can just be little cool shrines, or they can be little poke out areas where you can just get cool views and stuff like that. But adding these interesting sites to your build locations will just add a lot more depth to it and a lot more interest to the locations. And as mentioned in the former video, this is especially important and especially useful when you are building trails to make your trails less boring and more interesting. And this skill is also very, very useful in creative builds. So this one is both primarily for creative and survival. but we'll go ahead and take a look at tip number 3. Add life to your builds. And this is important, again, for both creative and survival. You want to have life around here. I haven't had a chance to go through and add many animals through this area yet, and as you can see, although I've got lots of interesting sights and stuff like that, it just doesn't feel very alive. There's no parrots flying around, there's no cats running around, there's no animals. It's just, it kind of feels bleak and dead. If we travel back over here to the animal district, as you can see, in front of each of these buildings, corresponding with what their functionality is, I've got some little pens with some animals just roaming around, and it just makes the whole world feel more alive. You can do the same thing if you have a village that you're building or a town, and you can add some villagers to it to just kind of have them wander around and just add some activity and life to your build. Down here in my water area, this is another key example of this. None of this area here is source blocks yet, so no mobs can spawn in it. And as you can see, this just kind of looks bleak and bland and boring, although I am working on it, which is one of the reasons why I don't want mobs in there right now. But over here in the actual riverway, the natural river, you can see that there's lots of fish and squid, and it makes the whole area feel like it pops and is more alive since there's so much activity in it. So you can also achieve this without life by adding things such as minecarts that are going back and forth between buildings, or you can have just little like clock towers or something like that that will ring a bell every once in a while throughout the game, depending on what time of day it is. Just different ways to add life to your world, make it feel like it's alive. But let's move on to tip number 4. Add story and lore. This is the most important of all of the tips, and this is crucial for both survival and for creative mode. However, I find that it is harder to add lore and story to my survival worlds until I am farther along late game and I have enough resources to do so. Often I find that I have difficulty combining both functionality and lore, but that is not always the case, depending on what type of build style you're going for and such. But I do not currently have many places in the survival world that I have built in lore to it, but it's easy to come up with some examples. So around the back here, I was planning on building another large tree, kind of like home tree over there. And then I was also planning on building another large tree over in my farming district and another large tree over in my mob district way back there. I was going to connect all these trees with a whole bunch of hanging ropes or hanging rope bridge looking things with minecarts going back and forth and such like that. Now, that would obviously add quite a bit more life, however, it can also add lore. Because the concept behind it would be, let's say that there are these, 3 different villages that have, set up shop really close to each other, and each of them has a different purpose, and they frequently trade between each other, and they are very close allies. And this is the kind of ruler of the 3 villages that lives in this main tree, and they use it as a base of trade and as a common link between all 3 of the villages. And just simple stories like that to add lore to your build. And these stories can be large like that, or they can be smaller stories that you tell about individual locations. For example, you can combine lore and interesting sites together to get some really cool little locations. For example, I was going to have over in this area a shipwreck up on this shore here, and I was going to have it set up as if they built a shop inside of it to sell wood, as if a long time ago a ship came through here and got stranded, or maybe they decided just to call this their home and they just crashed the ship into the shore, and then they built onto it and made it their home to live in. So whenever you're building locations, definitely consider what is a story that I can put behind this to give it more depth, more feeling, more love, more attention. Just consider different ways that you can make your worlds have some lore to them. And then it kind of makes it fun when you're sharing it with your friends because you can have little books left around with different stories of different locations, and it will definitely make it a lot more interesting for them to explore as well. So we are here with the final tip as the sun is setting, and that is add detail. Add detail everywhere. Now this one seems pretty obvious, but I mean, any location that you expect a player to be, add detail. You don't want to leave any stones unturned. Natural terrain generation is wonderful and it can be very beautiful in Minecraft. However, if you have lots and lots of custom terrain everywhere around your builds, it is going to show how much time, effort, attention, and love you put into your Minecraft worlds. So there are a lot of big builders out there that I look at their builds and I am absolutely blown away because they touch every single block in their worlds. And a lot of it, they just scrape off an area and make it look blank, and then they go back and they redetail it and they make it look natural again, but in the way that they want and feel best expresses the feeling that they are trying to show within their worlds. An example of this is how I am slowly converting my little lake river area through here into a gorgeous underwater area. And it is taking a long time, but eventually this entire waterway all the way around this tree and everything here is going to be completely 100% custom build. Not a single block is going to go left untouched. And that just shows a lot of attention and it brings out a lot of life and vibrancy within your world. Same with this mountain here. Eventually I plan on completely redoing this mountain, pulling up this bluff to make it look more impressive and significant, a much larger rock face along here, and then building something gorgeous and huge on top of there. And it is through ways like that, or like when you see along my pathways, that every single block is placed with care and attention and consideration to the feel that it's going to create, as well as the sight lines that it will produce. So that does it with the 5 tips and tricks. English, wow. Tips and tricks for making your Minecraft worlds feel more alive. If you enjoyed, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe, and I will catch you guys in a future episode. I'm probably planning on finishing out digging this area, and then I'll probably have the next episode be how to build underwater locations or something along that line as I work on building out this area of my underwater area. So I will catch you guys in that episode. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day, and I'll see you guys later.